Today, we're going to talk about when riots actually work. Sometimes, we get bogged down by the idea of violence and things of that nature, seeming like it's a little too much. But let's look in time, back in the time when this actually may have caused a change, and then let's look at some times where it didn't. Let's get into it. What's up, YouTube? How you feeling? How you living? What's good? It's your girl Francine. Today is Saturday. Say that Saturday when we say get it all out. Today we are talking about when rebellions and I cannot say that word. I sound like Bugs Bunny right now. When riots, or is that almost whatever one? I can't say the R-I together. Anyway, when are riots effective? When do they work? I know that violence does not seem like it's the answer, and most of the time it's not, but sometimes when things get a little too crazy, people come together and decide to fight for their rights in actual fighting. So let's get into 5 times in history where people have rebelled against the people who were in power, and let's see when it works and when it doesn't, and let's do kind of an analysis of what it looks like when it doesn't, because I think when it doesn't, it has a lot more in common, if you know what I mean. So let's get into it. Like I said, we're gonna do 5. Now, of course, if you went to any normal school, you learned about the first rebellion of this country, the rebellion that started this country, and that is the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party happened in 1773. If you haven't heard, it was, people who came here from Britain, they were getting taxed for the tea they were shipping over to them, and they were upset about that. They were mad about that. They were like, we shouldn't have to pay for this. We're part of your country. Why are you taxing us? We came over here to be free. And so these men thought what they should do is damage property. And so they decided to throw a bunch of tea overboard in the Boston Harbor to protest the tax that they were given by the British. They said that it made them feel un-British, that they were being taxed by the people that are supposed to be there for them. They're supposed to be, they were run by the British or ruled by the British. The British shouldn't be taxing them. And so the British was not very happy about that, as you know. And in history, we call that the Revolutionary War. And what happened? 3 years later, the Declaration of Independence was signed. Seems like that may have worked. I mean, it did take a war, but sometimes you gotta fight a little longer, right? Second one I never heard of before. It's called the Dorr Rebellion, which happened in 1841. Now, in Rhode Island, there was a lot of men who were upset about the fact that they had to pay up to $134 they had to have $135 in property in order to be able to vote. And they were like, that's not American. We should not have to, we don't have that in Rhode Island because of the property and because of the people who live there. They don't have the space to have that much land. And so, led by a Harvard attorney named Thomas Dorr, they decided at first to start peacefully. They wanted to talk to the government, and that didn't work. So what did they do? They called of arms, and they all decided to have an uprising. What happened because of this? Well, because of this, the amount of property you had to have got reduced to $1. So, I mean, if you know anything about in 1841, if I'm not mistaken, only white men could vote. So it was all just white men doing this. Just so you know. Then we had the Kent States riots in 1970. This one happened, it started at Kent State. People were upset about the fact that, America was expanding the war in Vietnam to Cambodia, and they were mad about it. They were upset. They didn't like the war anyway. If you knew anything about history, many people were against the Vietnam War. So many people were protesting about it. And so Kent State was like, we're going to do riots. We're going to have, it didn't start off as riots. It started off as protests, started off as march, and then it ended up being a riot. And in the aftermath, 4 students were shot, and because of this, there was an uprising in throughout the whole country, because they were like, you're killing people just to keep a war that we don't all agree with. Most people didn't agree with the Vietnam War. So there was a bunch of protests all over the country. Students were leaving out of their classes, and so they were really upset. They were really angry, and they didn't want to take it anymore. And so because of this, President Nixon decided to pull the troops from Cambodia. They got what they wanted. Now let's look at 2 times where it may not have actually done much, and then we can see what may be the difference in these 2 times. First time, Detroit riots, 1967. If you haven't heard about the Detroit riots, I actually watched the movie Detroit. I don't know why I watch these kind of movies, because it just makes me angry, and then like for the rest of the day I want to punch somebody in the face. Not like I do it, but like I'm angry, like angry. I remember I started watching When They See Us, and I was like, nope, my blood pressure, I can't. But the Detroit riots happened in 1967, and many things led to this. There was a lot going on in Detroit with segregation, with discrimination and housing discrimination, and the fact that a lot of these people were being arrested for really stupid reasons. Does that sound familiar? Okay. And so it all kind of sparked, and it kind of ignited after a bunch of veterans, they came for a party like at after hours, which apparently was illegal in the city. And so the police came, raided the place, arrested everybody, and people were just fed up. Like I said with the Stonewall riots yesterday, like when you keep messing with people and they gonna get fed up. And so that's what sparked the Detroit riots. They decided to riot, and it lasted for 5 days, and 43 people died and 342 were injured. Due to this, not much really happened. There was some push for diversity in the police force. I remember, I think this was in the movie, but I also remember when I was researching this, that they were trying to kill some of their black cops because they were just like, we're killing all black people tonight. Like that's how bad. And there was apparently such a disproportionate amount of black cops in the police force that they didn't really care. They didn't really like them. So there was protocol to kind of make diversity in the police force. And then there was also a push for legislation for housing, just better housing, fair housing. So I mean, they still were harassing people and, arresting people, but, they got more diversity, and they also gave for housing legislation that was way overdue, but, whatever. Then we got one that we all know has not done anything, because this is still happening today, and this is the one that I want to talk about the most, and that's the LA riots in 1992. Now, if you don't know about the LA riots, if you don't know about Rodney King, definitely do research on this. I, of course, heard about it growing up, but I didn't really know exactly what happened and how devastating it was and how big of an impact it had. So in 1992, Rodney King got stopped. If you have not seen that video, he got beat to bricks by 4 cops. And thankfully, he did not pass away. That a lot of people unfortunately don't have that blessing, but that shouldn't even happen in the first place. It's not how you handle an arrest. But they beat this man senseless, and it was on camera, which back then was a big deal, because like now we have camera phones, of course, and they have like police cameras, but back then having this on camera, seeing this on camera, I know a lot of people were saying, this happened to me, this happened to my brother, I've seen this happen in the streets, and now we have video evidence. We need some change. And all 4 of the cops who did this were acquitted. Sound familiar? So riots broke out because they were fed up, and so 50 people were killed and $1 billion of property was damaged. And this one is very upsetting because it seems like this one didn't do anything. Like, of course, you look at like the Boston Tea Party and the Door Rebellion and the Kent State riots, and you think, yeah, change can happen. Even Stonewall took a lot of time to get to where they needed to be. But with these last 2, we see the difference. It is people in low-income neighborhoods, people who are of color, who are being taken advantage of and abused, and they riot, and then they just brush it aside as if nothing happens. And right now, I think the best thing about this situation is that things are actually starting to change. There's a lot of places that are implementing, more stronger bans on certain things that the police can do. They're banning chokeholds. They're banning, all types of things that they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. I don't understand why you would ever need to choke someone out as a police. Like, I never understood, and I'm about to go on a rant, how you could become a police officer and continuously have to use excessive force on people because you're scared for your life. Like, the job, you know what? This is not the time for, actually, I say that Saturday. It is the time for my opinion. That's my opinion, okay? But with that being said, it just breaks my heart to see this happen in 1992. This was 28 years ago. Rodney King is still, I believe Rodney King is still alive. I think I saw him on reality TV not that long ago. So, but Rodney King is still alive. People who were there are still alive. You know, people who were there for Detroit riots are still alive today. Like, people who have been fighting and angry and upset have been doing this for years. And it seems like we're just getting an inkling of change. And that's why I think that, you know, even though we're upset about George Floyd, even though we're upset about Breonna Taylor, even though we're upset about Ahmaud Arbery, there's been countless people who we could add to this list in the last maybe 5 years. We can't stop fighting. Granted, like, we shouldn't riot all the time. Like, that's definitely not necessary. But we gotta still keep putting our foot on the neck of the senators and congressmen who are in power, who we have elected, to make sure that they are keeping these police officers accountable, because that's how things like this happen. We gotta keep putting the word out there about the people who are being abused by police officers so that we can get justice, because it seems like it's the only way that happens. We have to keep fighting for our rights, because at the end of the day, when the system is set up for you not to have these rights, when you look at, like, I mean, even the Boston Tea Party, like, they felt like at the end of the day, we shouldn't have to be under your rule anymore. This is not what we want to do anymore. And they fought for that and they won. So how can you be upset about just wanting to not be killed by a police officer? Like, I don't get it. But I digress. The point I'm making is, sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. And I think at the end of the day, as long as you keep fighting, even if it's not, like I said, of course, we don't have to keep, you know, doing what we're doing now, but like, just keep this relevant, keep this out there, keep talking about it. Like I said, in the last 5 years, I can give you a long list of people who have probably been murdered by the police and have not had any justice for their murders. And at the end of the day, that's not okay. Nobody should see that and be like, well, that's just a system. Like, no, that's not okay. Just like they said, well, that's just a system about Jim Crow laws, and now we don't have them anymore. And they said, well, that's just a system about segregated schools, and now that's not the system anymore. Like, you can't just say that's just the way it is when it's detrimental to a lot of people's lives. So I'm off my soapbox. Just had to get that out because that's been bothering me. But yeah, that's the video for today. Saturday. Of course, tomorrow we're going to get into the news. Tomorrow you're probably going to see me being real upset, but not as upset as usual, because I think I've calmed down. I've gotten more centered. I'm trying to be more professional. So I will see y'all on Sunday. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to share this to somebody who wants to see something like this, if you want people to, you know, join the community, to say that Saturday is supposed to be about having a community and talking. So if you want to put your comments about, you know, how you feel about rioting, how you feel about the riots I talked about, how you feel about how they change things, put that in the comment section below. And like I said, I'll see you Sunday. Bye.